Tuning, Ynet 7. Got Joshua with us today. Joshua Jones from Two Posts. Say what up to the people, big guy.
What's up, people?
Hey,
Ynet 7.
appreciate you joining us today. You know, you got an interesting story here, right? First of all, let me get you a full.
I ain't hearing you now, bro.
Yeah, I wanted to get the full shot of there for you so they could see your logo and stuff. And then I neglected that. When I do that, it takes my audio out. So good catch there. So, but you have a great logo design, everything with the Two Posts and the thorns there. Take a moment to tell people what Two Posts is and how you got to the point of starting it before we get started here.
Okay. Wow. Well, the point of starting Two Posts was amazing. Like, I've been on this entrepreneurial journey since I was young. I think about the age of 14, I really wanted to go do my own thing. Like, I just wasn't set for the things I was hearing through the education system, through what my family were telling me. Neither of my parents were entrepreneurs. And and the teachers I always saw as like hypocrites. You'll go do this and you'll be great. And it's like, why are you here sitting here teaching me? and and I get to this place about the start of my first family. I got my first daughter, my first child was born to me. And and it's like, okay, it's time. I had been doing some grinding with sales and marketing for a number of years, done fairly well. Got into the technology space, was in a joint venture. And inside of that joint venture, I was pigeoned as the tech guy. So I was bridging the gap for tech and marketing. And the two older partners, as I said, are older. And so I saw this little niche appear. And that was the origin really of the idea of the business behind Two Posts. Now, where the word came from was an entirely different journey. I had been about 4 years on a spiritual awakening journey in Christ, and that was what I was doing, was digging hard. And I was digging into the Greek and the Aramaic. I'm trying to understand, like, again, I like my teachers and like my parents, I wasn't resonating with what I was being told inside of my quote unquote church experience. So I found this in the New Testament, this idea of tupos, which is actually the example. But for the last 20 years, I ran the business as the entrepreneur's partner, where I would come in and literally be that example for them, showing them the path on how to bridge the gap inside of technology, sales, and marketing.
So thank you for sharing that. And I think that opens up the floor because a lot of people are struggling with what we've been talking about here on Ynet 7 for a while is the split between trans, transformative leadership, which we want to pivot to. I would like to see the community pivot to from transactional leadership, right? And then it's kind of like the split between normative social influence and informative social influence. So I kind of like how you were actually, I really like how you were explaining that you were in a position and the norms just weren't fitting your take on life at the moment, right? And to be able to stand up and challenge that enough to find yourself, speak on that for a moment. Just what it actually takes for people to know that it's okay to stand up, maybe be different, but to do that, to go inside themselves and find out what's really true and right for them. I think that's something people need help just knowing is okay, first of all, right?
Yeah, for real. Yeah. Everything is basically obey, obey, obey. And I grew up like I was a rebellious motherfucker. Like, and I don't know another way to say it, just supremely rebellious. It was like it was in my nature. And so that got me thinking about breaking the norms when I was very, very young. I mean, I had my first sexual experiences pre-10, you know, on both sides of the table. Like, it was very not your normal experience. I was born and raised as a Catholic. And then immediately at my age 13 became an atheist for 7 years. So I have a little, and I was also a single child until I was 14. So I have a little bit of different background and context to what it means to break the rules or to challenge the norms, because that's really what they are. Is you have these man-made imposed rules, that begin to stack one upon the other until you realize that it's just forming a cage. And when your soul is like yearning for freedom, you just want to be free. Your willingness to engage with that cage and begin to press upon those bars heightens. And sometimes you get really effective with breaking through or breaking out. And they want to go ahead and put you back in that cage, put you back in that space. No, well, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you should do. And you wind up your whole life getting shit on. Now, I did this with my own first two children. So I'm, hey, like this is just part of the experience here, and how you go about navigating that's what you got to do. But the first thing is, like, if you know deep down inside of you that you're not called to do a particular thing, whether it's how you operate in your job or how you operate in your family or how you operate in your life, then consider that nudge, you have the opportunity to explore. Right? You have the opportunity. See, at the end of the day, it's not your parents that's going to stand and give account for you. And that's something that I came to realize too. Like, hey, look, at the end of this, and the way I was taught is like, hey, look, you could live a horrible life your whole life, and then, hey, you get ready to die just before that last breath, and you're out. You're good. Check. So my context was like, well, why am I being told I need to do this when I want to do that? Well, I want to go explore that. What is that like? And they'd be like, no, don't go there. You know exactly what a child wants to do. They go on, go there right now. So my encouragement to you would be explore. The more you explore, the more you realize that's not the end of the road yet. Nobody else is going to stand in there and give an account for you on that day. That's going to be something you're going to need to do, right? This is your journey. And the beauty in that, for me, as I began down the path of spiritually awakening, was I began to understand that there is this idea of a generational downpouring or outpouring into your life, into my life. And so that when I was born, I arrived with baggage. And so half of this journey of like breaking free and doing what you're called to do is all about getting rid of baggage. And oftentimes that baggage is just your mental stuff, right? So it's a lot easier than you may think. But if you have fear that's guiding you instead of love, it's always going to prevent you.
That's well said. Hey, I want to take a look at this real quick, right? And because it bleeds right into what you were saying here. Let me get it up here. So that's not the one I want. Right? So two posts, Greek lexicon from the New Testament, like you mentioned.
Yep.
The mark of a stroke or blow or print. And it says a figure formed by a blow or impression of a figure or image, right?
Yes.
So now when we look at life and people, right? We go into the fact that trauma, and even on the good side of things, forms impressions. So it's like you're being struck by, what's that, Michael Jackson? You've been struck by, you've been hit by a
smooth criminal.
Right. So that strike or that blow can be positive, it can be negative, but the thing is, it's going to have a lasting impression.
Yep.
And in traumatic experiences, just like good ones, but in traumatic experiences, one way to cope with it is to keep revisiting the trauma, right? You're stuck at the job you don't want, but you keep going back, right? You are in a relationship you don't want, but you keep going home to that same person or whatever, right? So I think that what you were when you were telling your story earlier about, hey, first of all, you're recognizing that imprint was a stamp on you, right?
Yeah.
It was like forced on you, right? And then something happened that imprinted you or struck you, right? To say, hey, wait a minute, what's that over there, right? The light, even if you just look at it as the light from seeing it came and struck your eye, it's still a strike or a blow. It's some new information, right?
Yeah.
Now you're interpreting that information and now you're curious. So expand on how, because I know you just told a great story that, and I was able to share that with the two posts breakdown, which may or may not be the exact, but that's from the Bible, right, or from that website. Um, Now bring that into being the example,
Okay.
becoming the
So
example.
yeah, so the past 20 years there's been a lot of trauma, and you bring up some really good points here. Life is fucking traumatic. Like, period. I don't care who you are. And I've met some unicorns out there that swear to God they have no trauma in their life whatsoever. You know, had perfect parents, silver spoon, everything worked out for them all their lives. And I'm certain they're tucking some shit away that they don't even remember. And that's okay. They think they're unicorns. We let them have that. The rest of us, though, that are walking this earth, we have trauma. And so this is the idea when I pivoted to business this year. You know, God was knocking on my door at the turn of the year, 2023 now, January 2023. And we just celebrated the year of this idea. Is like, okay, now I need you to actually become the example. As one of these few words he spoke to me about. And it didn't resonate with me for a long time because, like, we're all kind of our own thing, right? And particularly, I like the image you got there. You got the damn masks on. We're not really paying attention to things. We're not really being present inside of spaces. We're not really putting intention into our daily life. Most of us aren't even really trying to connect to God anymore. You know, you look at the churches for the most part, you know, just people just showing up for a little social and a little entertainment. And well, hey, they could say it was the Bible, the word of God, and they go into the parking lot and they're cussing at each other because they can't get out of the way fast enough to go to their whatever.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. It's just this idea is all superficial, and you know, we've got all this technology sitting over there. So the idea that God was trying to impose upon me by was this very thing, this tupos. Look, we're gonna remove this trauma by processing it. But the challenge there is you have to be honest about it. See, there is no moving forward through the trauma until you become honest enough to confront where you're really at. And some of it, you got to go dig deep and uncover this and uncover that. I mean, I had to this past year, no, the year before that, I had conversations with both of my parents. Now they've been divorced since I was young. And I had stories that was running through my mind about how that went and what part I played in that and what I was exposed to. And it wasn't until I finally broke down to him and I said, listen, no, I'm trying to be set free here. And there are things that you've told me that aren't true or haven't told me. See, because lying could just be as easily be leaving the thing out as it could be completely lying about what you're stating.
Mm-hmm.
And after that process, both of them were able to unburden themselves from some things that, well, frankly, I wasn't even aware of, or not to that extent. And once that happened, all of a sudden I was like, chains kind of came loose a little bit. Like, you ever get that moment where you have a little bit of a breakthrough and you're like, oh, like I might just be able to get free. And then you go yanking hard. And it's like, wait, what is that? That's how it is, you know. And that's just this idea that God's calling his people. He's saying, come out of her, my people. Be separate, be set apart. And there's something that's profound in that. And it's like, it's going to require burning down everything. And I think a lot of it comes down to this idea that the presence of God is an all-consuming fire. This is the way to burn everything down. Burn down the lies so the truth can rise. Now, when Christ was upon his showcase, if you will, in Jerusalem, about to be crucified, these soldiers plaited a crown of thorns upon him, spit on him, kicked him, beat him, all kinds of stuff, right? And we've all heard the story. If you've watched Passion of the Christ, like every other person on the planet practically, you've seen some really gory shit. And the fact is, like, you're going to have to be willing to be as naked and exposed and injured as he was in order to come to the place where you can actually take up your cross and follow him. So I give you a reason, a little context for why I say it that way. So at the turn of the year last year, so moving into 2023, God informed me that I had been a hypocrite and a liar. This was after a 30-day fast, mind you. So we went through, talk about some beating. You know, you go 30 days without food, your body's going to start talking to you in a different way.
Right.
And all of a sudden it was like, wow, I'm a liar. There's a special place in the lake for me. He's like, yeah, if you continue down that path, that's exactly where you go. And so I became radically honest in 2023, like radically. I even went back with my parents once more, got face to face with them about these things. So much so my mother wound up breaking down to me, weeping and crying. My dad sat here in my basement and wept and cried about the stories I was telling him. And we were able to have this real breakthrough where then I had like, when I, instead of just being able to shrug, I could yank completely and the chains fell free. But this broke me free from smoking. This broke me free from drinking. This broke me free from everything. Just being willing to throw the truth on the table and just let it be what it is. Knowing that there's feelings involved with that, knowing that there's people that's going to get pissed off about all that. Listen, you're your own, right? I mean, you didn't make yourself, but I mean, you're your own. You want to try and love everybody, of course. But if they want to keep you shackled and they want to keep you chained, then you're going to have to consider, who do you want to please more? Right. And that's why I've got it in the logo of the business now. So as we align entrepreneurs in their business and bring this divine intelligence to bear inside of their life and business, we always want to maintain that. Like, where is that course? Where's that flow of truth? And if we can follow that, or that vein of truth, kind of like hunting gold, if we can follow that vein, we can mine it all out and get rid of all the overburden. And you can be free and left with this pile of gold. And you can go forth and do what you were called to do. And that's what we're really after now. It's a lot more than the business side of things. It's the entirety of this. There you go.
So
and that's
the key point, right, is what the word love really mean, right? Because I think a lot of people are jamming themselves up, and I say this often, but it's good to let people see it with their own eyes, right? So love, most people use it as a verb, but it's a noun. And see, love is a different grade. It's Proto-Germanic lubo, L-U-B-O. So it's a different grade. And the most common place that it's used, I'm gonna say most common, but it's hidden in plain sight in the game of tennis. Because every number, every integer other than 0 has a precise exact value. Even if it's 1.694442, right? It's a precise number. 0 is the only one on the number line that is nothing and everything at the same time, right? So it's the only different grade of number. So you either have something precise, a score, or you have love. So I think that's powerful for when you were making those examples, because what you're doing is you're breaking free from the mold, and you're becoming a different grade of individual. You're seeing the truth. There's a different grade of truth at that point, right? It's not necessarily that they were, let's say, people were lying to you or to us in general, you know, speaking about people as a whole. It's they were focused or narrowed on what they saw the truth as. But like I say, you can't be true without considering the infinity. So minds like us realize, okay, well, they're stuck on A through R, right? Maybe they have trauma issues that make them pretend it's not there, whatever the case is. So what I like about that though is you were kind of bringing us to the point where I want to ask this question. How can individuals, right? Now we're kind of guiding them to the fact, hey, it's okay to look within yourself and maybe go against the grain in some cases. So now how can individuals play a role in shaping the expectations of their communities towards, let's say, sustainability and just growing into something else also? What small actions can have big impacts to help them get that ball rolling?
Well, that's a really loaded question, and I appreciate that, Pasha, because the idea of coming back to center point, coming back to base zero, coming back to love, it was so much to unpack there. We could probably spend the next 45 minutes just doing that. But to answer your question more succinctly, getting your own house in order is in every degree, in every imaginable permutation thereof. These are the steps. This is we're talking about your mental house, we're talking about your emotional house, we're talking about your physical house, we're talking about your family house, we're talking about your physical dwelling, in all of these layers. And remember, from your inside out, you have the most control from the inside, right? So you choose, and the other thing, yes, thank you. So the other thing that's a big time pivot, and all of this, mind you, let me just step back for a moment. All of this is about becoming the example, because there is no way without us endeavoring on this path ourselves and being able to show the fruit of this journey.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way the hypocrisy is going to be enough to tear people's vain imaginations down. All right. And that's what we're dealing with inside of our minds constantly, is just vain imaginations. So as I say, get your house in order, number one. And then number two, it's going to be interesting if we go there, I guess, but that's okay. But number two, I guess we're not going there now. Let's stick with the path here of getting your house in order. The responsibility is where it comes from. Okay. We can't lead if we're not going to become responsible and accountable. So those two pieces right there, wherever you can find to take responsibility. For example, let's just flesh this out. If I'm saying, well, it's because of so-and-so did that. The moment you hear yourself saying that junk, stop.
Mm-hmm.
Stop immediately. And recognize within yourself, you are leaking power. You are giving somebody else authority and control over you. And so those are some of the most simplest. And now I see why we didn't go there. Everything that you have is inside of your mind, right? There's a gateway inside of your mind, just like the doors or the eyes, the gate to the soul. These doors are connected into the brain. And so everything you visualize is this interpretation inside of your mind. Same thing goes on with, hey, you've been told all of this. And so your faith is built upon what you've heard. You have your own thoughts. You have the thoughts injected by other people. You have the thoughts injected by other spirit beings. You have the thoughts injected by the Spirit of God. There are all of these things to compete with. But the moment that you can come and down to take responsibility, then you are prepared to go to war in your mind. And that's where you're going to make the most momentum. These small little things, something like journaling in the morning. Man, I hate so-and-so, blah, blah. Just throw it all out on the paper, man. Just let it be what it is. And then come back and look at that. And find out where you can pluck your responsibility and accountability out of that, and then rewrite the story. Like, what's the story about that? What are you telling yourself that gives person X control over how okay, now we add it. Okay, how you respond. So this is the idea that he wouldn't let me go to until now. It's react and respond. So everybody, myself included, we are reactionary. We have been bred that way.
Mm-hmm.
So something happens, you react, you're pissed, you're triggered, something. What we would need to come to a place to is in our own lives, as we get our houses in order, to become the example, we have to learn to pivot away from this reaction to a response mechanism. This is like techniques like breathing come in. Techniques like meditation come in. Being able to quiet your mind. It gives you this little buffer. I mean, you look at social media, ding, 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 bam, I'm reacting. I'm on it, right? I'm in the middle of conversation with my queen. Bam, hold on, baby. Come on now. It'd be like, and then we make excuses, right? We are great creatures of making excuses. So, and that's like, I'm going to blame the circumstance instead of the person. Again, take the responsibility, own the fact. No, I didn't do that shit today. Well, good. That's step one. You own that. Nobody's over here to condemn you. I mean, that's the beauty of this walk that I'm on. I realized that all this condemnation that was slung at me most of my life
Mhm.
should have been laughing at it and just smiling and praying for him.
It's a part of
But
the it's a part of the journey, right?
it is. Yep.
It all like, and I really appreciate you being able to have the open conversation with yourself, because I be doing that too. That's why I was sitting there. I was like, man, I'm so curious now to what the part was, and then we came to it. So
Yeah, it's like, dude, you're about to run way ahead of me. Calm down.
like, oh, we're gonna tell us like, all right. So and then we brought up the house for example. It
Hmm.
that shit right there kind of it resonates with me maybe on a great level actually, because the name Pasha Paro is General Greathouse. And when people ask me about it, they be like, "Well, what is that?" Because a lot of people don't realize where Paro came from to begin with. But the accolade I go by um, in my natural person form, not the juridical, right, is Paro Nakoda Wuded. So when you break that down, it means great house, distinguished, restore. And when I tell people, I say, because your great house can be your heart, right? It's going to start with your heart, then it's going to be your mind, then your body, then your household, then your community, right? And you can scale it
Hmm.
up,
Hmm.
city,
Hmm.
state, all the way up to eventually it becomes the nation. So
Hmm.
great house, distinguished, restore. My walk is to looking to restore the nation to proud again, basically. You know what I mean? For put it shortly, and that starts with as many individuals at least, because it may not be everybody, but we need a critical mass, so it's got to start with the individual level as well. So you learn this whole broad spectrum of things to be able to facilitate that. And I like the response versus react, because when you find love, when you get to that different level, right, of perspective, your 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 emotions don't trigger reactions, right? They trigger
Right.
responses, because now you're on a different level. You're able to identify, okay, I got the signal, I got the input. Now let me process. I mean, unless it's something that you need to actually react at that moment for, like, our actual reaction is called for. But normally it's shit that may trigger a person.
Hmm.
When you talk to them about it and you're coaching them, you find, hey, look, read your emotions, then take time, formulate the response. Right
Right.
now, you're on that different level, so you can see that. Now, you gave plenty of key behavioral changes, journaling. Sometimes we do music, all kinds of stuff. Even when you get on the phone and gossip, to the women be gossiping or talking about stuff, and it's all a form of therapy, right? So everything that we've went through is part of who we are today, right? So be proud of those experiences, because it made you able to deal with the stuff that you're handling today. And then the stuff you're doing today combined with that is making you who you are going to or supposed to be tomorrow in the
Hmm.
future. So overcoming challenges, right? And community. How does one, now that they're at that state, right, give the people a taste of becoming the example when it comes to overcoming the challenges that's been stamped on them and around them in their life? Because some things are going to require us to respond to others in order to provoke change in our environment. Like currency, for example. People like, you can't get rid of the currency. It's going to be impossible. There's too many people. And I'd be like, there's always a way, you know. But it's going to take other people to see the value. So go that direction with us. Just, I mean, it don't got to be about the currency, but just in
Sure.
general, because to become sustainable in our communities, we got to, once we look at our lives individually, now we got to start to come together to overcome challenges.
Sure. Well, the conversation of value is where it's at for me, right? This whole idea that there's and hmm, I don't sit here and harp on the idea of human life value. I think that's a little more abstracted. I look at it from a perspective of a body. Right. Again, my unique perspective as a believer is in Yeshua and the Christ, and as an Israelite, as a Jew, and like I have these different perspectives of what a body should be. Like when we deal inside of this commercialized country, at least the one we're in, with this border, then we're dealing with a dismembered body. And I mean that's literally what they're after. So the idea is to try to come together in the path of least resistance, and then inside of that space begin to form a network of value, right? And it's like the idea of bartering. I mean, there is the currency is purely the value. Like, man, I need some fucking corn, bro. What you need? I need asparagus, dude. I just got a batch of asparagus. Can I have some of your corn? Cool. Work it out. Work it out. So like this idea of trading value is great. Now, it's a good way to get away from coin if that's the particular topic that somebody's after. You know, if you're trying to get away from the rules, like the idea of getting away from the cities. Like, hey, listen, you don't want to be a part of a smart city? Get the hell out of them now. And you won't be integrated into what the requirements are as they roll them out. You want to get closer to those of like mind? Do that. You know, you don't need to go all crazy and be all compoundish or you know how this country like to do with the Koresh's and whatnot. Don't do any kind of crazy wild shit that's going to get you flagged either. Like, be smart about it. Stay humble. You know, you don't need to go kick the prick. I'm sure you cannot kick enough for this thing to fall. But just like the Israelites walking around Jericho, for example, they weren't going to sling enough weapons against those walls to bring them down. But if they tuned in with God and they all got in one accord and they walked around their happy asses 7 times, guess what? The walls came crumbling down. So there's this idea of the more that we prepare ourselves and our desire and capacity to provide value, you're going to find these connections just show up. Right? The preparation meeting opportunity, meeting the divine table setting, if you will, for you to move forward in that. And there's just no clear path for it because there's not enough loud voices. I mean, there's more loud voices about, hey, change your kids' freaking gender right now. Like more programming voices going on, you know, than there is, hey, let's come together and do the thing. Leveraging the technology is another one that we've been talking about. This idea that you can have community and accountability inside the virtual space. Now it's limited. It's not the most optimal for accountability, right? Face to face. If I can come walk, you could tell me all kinds of bullshit online, but then I come walk in your door, all of a sudden the game's different, isn't it? So there's that. And the other idea, and this is something we're going to be bringing to the church this year, because there's with the Go Christ movement, this thing was not set up correctly in the beginning. I mean, we all know that.
What
right?
thing?
There may have, go ahead.
What thing is that exactly?
Anything. Like this country that we're in right now, the churches that came over with this, I mean, they brought all that baggage with them and just established it here, basically, calling it a much cooler, a much cooler idea, I suppose. But it's not really. It's the same old repackaged thing, right? So there has to be a new, just like for us individually, this idea of becoming a new creature where the old things die and so the new things can come forth. There's going to have to be that level of transformation inside of the churches, inside of the governments, inside of everything. And that foundation, as far as I see it now, again, not everybody agrees with that, and that's okay. Look, I'm totally fine with that. Is built upon the foundation of the prophets and the apostles. The apostles and prophets are the two big keys missing right now. And this is that idea of, hey, we're going to go this direction. And the prophet's like, nope, that won't prosper. The apostle comes to set up a local congregation, set them up. And does it work? Does it not work? It'll depend on how much the apostle puts in there and what level of eldership can be raised before he needs to depart. Right? So if God put him there in the first place, he's going to be able to find these elders, raise them up, depart, reestablish training. The prophet's going to arise out of that to judge the thing, and this community is going to come together and start to self actualize. They're going to have homegrown accountability, homegrown sustainability. Everything there is there. I mean, wherever the Spirit of God is, there's freedom. Right. And so as those communities then get formed in little pockets, they're going to have this where they can come together virtually on a larger scale. Right. And as they grow closer and closer, and I see the end result going to be something to the effect of they'll be out of this country by the end of it. There won't be much left of this as far as I can tell. I'm just thinking from the terms of the 50 million babies murdered across this land. The bloodshed's enormous. So again, don't think like that old system is somehow just going to become the good system, right? There will have to be a resurrection of a love system.
I like it, and then that's where you hear that tunes me into something I tell people often, which is to be proud, right? Because they got this stigma against proud, and I say, well, this humble campaign has destroyed not only communities but the nation, right? Because it's saying to us, hey, be humble, right? And it's like, well, that would be great if humble was something good, but when you look at the etymology, what humble is, whether you want to call it quantum physics and magnetics or the law of attraction or prayer, right? So what we're praying for when you say humble is not proud. That's what humble means. Which, okay, not proud might be something good, but when you look at what the etymology of proud, it's the noble, excellent, and splendid. So now, from the humble campaign, we're exiling, we're criticizing, we're ridiculing, we're outcasting everything that's noble, excellent, and splendid in our communities, and we're wondering why we're left with humble, right? Because not things that we're not proud of. So when you brought up the body being the people of the nation being a body, that's a great example, and how disconnected it is, because the manipulation factor, right, from big government and all that stuff. Let me put a little image up here. Has them brainwashed, and then they love division because it makes it easier for them to control everybody, because united we stand, divided we fall, right? So now, we brought up the people that are changing their genders or whatever, right? The government, the so-called United States corporation, is really enjoying that, because it gives them another set of boxes to put on their little forms. That's a political subdivision, which means now they got more check marks you can choose that you are. So they got more options to show that they can put you over there as an asset of the corporation. And then they get more loans based on having more assets. But people don't realize that manipulation is just to get them to become property of the United States, so that they can then leverage you as property on their collateral, financial stuff. Right. So now, with that on the table, the virtual aspects that you were speaking about of platforms like this, and just even the one you got coming soon, or just a regular Zoom meeting being a virtual meeting versus a physical show up, meeting, I think has huge value. And I've been telling people that for years, because when you have the right mindsets, right, and or you agree on a destination, it's easier to overcome all obstacles, right? So when you're sitting down here and you're really focused on destination or purpose or results, it doesn't matter if you're in person or not, because the communication is being had. So the people that are like, oh, I don't like virtual, they're probably not really that tuned into the value of getting it done, or else they would be able to overcome the obstacle. So now, what you brought up, and I'm gonna ask you this question, because to get people, like what I just went through was, hey, there's a bunch of opportunity for us to learn something from anybody, right? Everybody. But we have to value the fact that we don't know what we don't know. And then we have to value the fact that to become the example, I might have to add some additional ingredients, or I might have to remove some unnecessary imperfections, right? Which is going to take gaining the knowledge of why that action, that change itself is going to be valuable, right? So
Absolutely.
so here we go. So how can education play a role in shaping community expectations?
Well, the education is key, right? You are programmed. Period. There's no I'm not programmed. Yes, you are. Everyone's programmed. You program yourself every day when you wake up. So the education is absolute key. So what is it that we have to do inside of the education? Well, I'm going to give you a great example of this because this blew my mind. It came up in my mind earlier as we were having our conversations, just this idea of examples and stuff. So with my first kids, when I was starting a company, we had um, we had African family and an Ethiopian family on our block. This was like not a cul-de-sac, it's the invert, right? It's a big circle with one way in and one way out. So all the kids would get out and play all the time. But there was something very different about the Ethiopian family that we encountered from the African family. And the African family, their parents and we just didn't jive. Couldn't really explain it. Not that they didn't do anything to us. We didn't do anything to them. This is just their baggage versus our baggage, I suppose. Ethiopian family, oh, we'd have each other over. We'd have them over. They'd have us over. But I watched the kids and it started to come out inside of the kids. I could see it. And what I saw there was this programming that these African parents were putting into their children was like, hey, don't play with that. You're going to get in trouble. You're going to be the kid that's going to get in trouble. It's like, listen, parents, you telling your children that, fuck you. You need to stop doing that. You are hurting your children every single day. Just because you grew up with that crazy shit does not mean that they need to grow up with it. But this is where the education loop comes in. If we can educate the children across the board and come to the answer to the question now, then let's do that. They are all God's children. They are all divine sparks that should radiate nothing but love. And then this is the wild part. You put the younger children together before you get a chance to where they're not communicating with words. It doesn't matter where they come from at all.
Right.
They just walk around and have fun with love. Now, if they watch, snatching in the house and mom and dad fighting, they're probably going to come over and snatch some blocks or hit somebody with something. But again, that tends to the programming. So, and this is where becoming the example is so important. It's like the key. Like you can't teach something you're not doing or you're a hypocrite, right? We got enough of that in the world. And there are enough hypocritical educators to fill. Yeah, I'll leave that one alone.
We'll come back.
It's a lot. We'll probably come back to it though. But the idea that they are supposed to be the example, right? The teacher is supposed to be the one in the that is doing the thing being taught. And that's what I find. So how do we change that is we just have more people becoming the example. Stop being focused on all this shit you cannot control and get down to the brass tacks of what you can control. And as you become the example, even the way that you articulate will change. So like the way that you even perceive the problems change. There'll be different problems altogether. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, wow, no, this is what my mom and dad told me. Oh, no, this is just something that I thought. Like, they never came over and talked to us. They would say hi every time we walk around the block. But they'd wave back, getting in the car or whatever. But like, that was it. And for the longest time, I wondered what was this dividing line, because obviously I never played the other side of this game, right? I mean, as far as most people's concerned on the melatonin scale, a little bit richer, I got a card or something, I mean, I've talked to them all the time. I ain't got no fucking card. I ain't been to college. I didn't get shit handed to me. I mean, I got a few things handed to me I didn't respect, just like y'all did the same thing, right? So it's like, that's just life for me. I grew up in Cali too, so I was exposed to lots of African, lots of Hispanic, lots of Asian. We had a big melting pot there. So I mean, I thought for a long time I was blacker than most of my black brothers. So I thought that's funny. I love rap too, by the way. Back then, I used to freestyle like a motherfucker. Anyway, I digress. The teaching aspect is it's got to be authentic, it's got to be real, and it's got to be conducted by actually called teachers. You know, we talked about this idea of the body. This so like the elbow, the only thing it's good for teaching is like a little throat check in jujitsu. You know what I mean? Like, it's not great. But then the finger, it seems to be used for everything. The mouth, it seems to be used for everything. You know, the little pinky toes wrapped up in a shoe, you never see it during the teaching, but it just happens to keep the teacher steady. Right.
Right.
So there's all these parts that at play, but there's only certain parts that are like mission critical for the teaching. But in as you narrow down into the sphere, you're going to teach yourself every day. You're going to program yourself, and you can change the course of that programming by simply shifting your intention, shifting your energy, which we call like rewriting the story inside of your mind. You have this story that puts you in this state. Oh, I hate this. Oh, I hate this government. I hate this, whatever. I hate this situation going on.
Mhm.
Shift it to this power mode of gratitude, and then look for your opportunity to regain responsibility and accountability inside of that space. And as you start to shore up all those little power leaks, you come to the place where you can really walk in power. You can shift your programming. You'll shift the programming inside of your marriage, shift the programming inside of your children. And ultimately, that will shift the programming inside of your community.
That's well said. I like the when you said respond that last time. What popped in my mind was respond must be connected to responsibility because they start off with like
Yeah.
the same letters, right?
Right.
So to when you said, "Hey, like I hate this government" or whatever, right? The odd part is when you take the time to respond so that you can be responsible, that energy, that change happens in you, that love becomes now you can fall in love with the government because you realize what they really are versus what you thought they were before. See, like the people that you had, that Ethiopian family on the block, you know, could have been whatever, right? That programmed them, that shaped their form, their thought process. It could have just been the way their family was. I don't know, right? Who knows what? Maybe they
No,
were CIA, and that's how they keep their cover. You know what I'm saying? We don't know, right? But
we
here's the
don't know.
thing. Here's the thing. In today's world, right? Well, actually, in the world in general, period, you have that separation, whatever we want to call it, in every aspect of life, right? You got people that don't want to talk to you because, oh, well, you're not making your business isn't making 150,000 a year, so I can't
Hmm.
associate with you. Or, you wear Nikes and I wear Reebok. It would be the dumbest shit for what,
Hmm.
right? But they
PS5 and Xbox. Yeah,
right, right.
crazy.
Football Steelers or Panthers. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Where there's so many ways to practice division
Yeah.
that's been given that it's caused it easy makes it easy to divide. Now, like I said, this what you call the government is exploiting the whole thing because they benefit from it. So when we take a look and actually go and educate ourselves on it, we find out, like I said, hey, look, it really doesn't matter because you don't hear me say I'm black or African American or any of that because I now know what those words mean, right?
Hmm.
Jurisdiction, status determines jurisdiction. Another way to put that is your nationality determines what law applies to you, right? So this is how come like the when the Germanic tribes adopted Christianity, we've covered that here on Y-7, and they capitalized the word God from it used to be little God, it now made it a brand. So the same way they were arguing about Nike, Reebok, Mercedes, Toyota, now they're arguing, and there's a authentication check mark on this God thing, which takes people and say, no, you can't be you. You have to be who we tell you to be, right? And that's what I like about your formula is it's really saying, hey, look, we need to accept that God is omnipresent, right? You are who you are. Now let's perfect that, right? Let's build that out. So the irony is when people can start to become omnipresent, for example, in what we call this nation, right? You'll realize that that separation is what's killing us and keeping us from being much more innovative as a people and much more wealthy. Because it don't matter if you're what you want to call black, white, American Indian, any of that. If you check the box on the form, the LGBTQ whatever, right? If you got a box on that government form that you check, you're a political subdivision. So that makes you a United States citizen instead of an American, right? So that's going to be the new war separation right now is to bring the United States citizens that are feeling that pain, that are sitting there talking about I hate this government, I hate this job, I hate this the fact that I can't exercise equality in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness because this is a currency based society and someone controls the currency, right? And bring their minds back to being American. Leave the United States behind. So that's going to take us to come together in ways that we never even thought of before. So what you know, how can we start to encourage people to post style to look at the government not as an enemy, but to know who it is and then pivot into that new life that we need to restore power to we the people? How do you think that will work?
So inside of the world as it is right now, the number one way to move is to basically set up a business. Whether you're ready to go all in it or not is irrelevant. One of the things you want to do is begin to shelter your income from. You understand the tax liability that exists as a W-2 employee in this in this uh, in this nation. So, so being able to move money from liability is going to help set you free. And if you can do that for a number of years and get a taste for that and understand that you can actually now turn this business into something. Maybe you have an idea you're ready to go on now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have a business already and you need to just shift everything into it. There are so many ways to improve the status of that business. And that business is just an entity, right? Once it has its own credit profile, it has its own basically its own damn being, right? You can abstract away your liability entirely.
It's a person.
It's its own person in the eyes of this law here. So as you file taxes every year, and that's one of the big things. I mean, people tell I remember this growing up, since I grew up, nothing's so sure as death and taxes. Like, oh man, are you programmed, bro? I used to hate that saying. And like, I don't even believe that death is that sure.
Right.
From my perspective, I die, I just go back to that. So I don't see that as a problem. Same with tax liability. I mean, you have to come to a place of conformity in order to play this game, of course. Otherwise, you're always going to have something behind your back just waiting to pounce on you, right? Some open door.
We didn't ask to play this game.
Nobody asked to play this game, right? I mean, I think about it oftentimes. I'm like, God, I didn't ask to be born at this time. Like, it could have been so cool to just be back when it was horse and buggy and let me have a farm, take care of my neighbors. Like, that'd have been great. What are we doing here?
or did we? Because some accounts say, we signed up to be here at this time, but
Some accounts do. Yes, some accounts do. Yeah. And, some say he saved the best for last. So whatever the case is, whatever people believe is totally fine. But the
So
fact is we are here now and
yeah,
we happen to be playing by a set of rules and knowing, again, the knowledge is key, right? So like what you're endeavoring to do to educate the communities is, hey, listen, there are ways that you can separate yourself. Take advantage of them now.
yeah, and I appreciate that because what we're doing is our work parallels, and that's the thing about looking at people and accepting them for value instead of being critical and judging. Take the time to get to
Mhm.
know someone, get to know your neighbor before you say you don't want to talk to them, right? Um,
Definitely.
Maybe after you get to know them, you might realize you don't want to talk to them, but get to know them first. Have the reason instead of an assumption, because
Yep.
I like the fact of how you're going about your work and the angle, because different people respond diversity, and that's where it's like, don't expect everybody to convert. I like to look at people for who they are, what they're good at, and then feed them that role, right?
Yeah.
Because then they'll enjoy themselves. So
Mhm.
what kind of um people are you looking for to help mold and cultivate and add value to? Who would be the people
Sure.
that reach out to Joshua at Two Post LLC?
So these are gonna be people that are knowing that there's more going on than what they've been taught in the church, what they've been taught by their families, what they've been taught by their previous mentors or coaches. People that really want to inject divine intelligence into their lives, people who are serious about operating in the truth, people that need to unburden themselves. Like I have found this has been a gift my whole life, long before, I mean, in talking grade school. People will come up to me and tell me their most deep, darkest, raunchy stories. And somehow I didn't judge them. Like it just worked that way. And now I see full circle what that's about. I've got some pretty raunchy stories too. So there's all this relatability. So people that like they feel isolated, they feel ashamed, they feel guilty, they feel depressed, they feel all this anxiety. They feel
Mhm.
like they're all alone and all the world's on their shoulders and they can't find it. Like they're not just caged, they're pinned down to the ground.
The imprint.
They're imprinted so hard that they cannot realize who that they have been made to be.
Wow.
And those are the people that will flock to this movement or all of these movements.
Exactly. I like it. And that's what it is. The imprint, the stamp, the foot on the neck. You feel like you can't get up, but it's time for you to stand up. We got to stand up and stand for something, right? Stand for the truth, not just anything.
Yes.
And I like it because, you know, it's like the whole, when you were saying, finding something more beyond what you know. Okay, so we got to admit we don't know what we don't know, and
Yes.
people be like, Pasha, why you be the way you are? I'm like, okay, I found some, based on people's responses, I found a great way to make a short impact, but huge, right? And it's like, okay, without going into the whole spiel of the legal stuff, right? Most of us grew up, couldn't wait for our driver's license. Then you get your driver's license, you're all excited. Now you think you can drive, right? That's what you were programmed to. So it's kind of like they embedded that in us.
Yep.
Then we find out that people like me find out, or people that seek the truth, seek the knowledge, right? Look for the love. Said, I hate this shit. There gotta be something more to it. So they find the love. Realize that the word driver is one who is employed to conduct, wagon, coach, etc., motor vehicle. So unless you're a UPS driver, truck driver, you're not actually driving. You might be traveling for entertainment purposes only. It's not legal advice, right? But I've won court cases on it myself for entertainment, for your entertainment purposes, right? Out there, people. So what I brought that up for at this moment is to show the justification that just because you're suffering through something, just because the world around you has normalized a situation, a feeling, oh, the job sucks, but we all need to just toughen up and become the frog in the boiling pot, right? The community's bad, but again, let's just be the frog in the boiling pot until we all just die, right?
Mm.
That doesn't mean that there's not that level of freedom out there, and we just haven't discovered it yet. So why was the driver thing so important? Not only does it give you the individual freedom, right? Because now the speeding and all the driver stuff don't really apply to you because you're a traveler. It only applies to commercial traffic. But then on the community level, all of those tickets that your family paid, all of those that the community paid, look at all that money extracted, currency
Mhm.
extracted. But here's the most
Mhm.
powerful thing: 80% of police shootings start with a traffic stop.
Mhm.
So we just knew what the word driver meant, not overnight, but and indirectly, we could reduce police shootings by 80% in this nation. So go beyond what you think the norm is. Call Josh, send him an email, go to his website, schedule some time with him, and let him show you what's beyond. Josh, we're up on the hour. You got any what's your thoughts now? How you looking on time? I want to make sure we're respectful.
Oh yeah, we hit the hour. Look at that. Flew like flew like nothing. So my big thing that I might take away from this is simply listen, just stop lying. Anything that doesn't resonate, anything that if you know you're out of integrity yourself, stop you personally lying. All of a sudden you're going to start see the rest of the lies start falling to the ground. If you can get yourself into that flaming fire, that presence of God, and start ripping down and tearing down and burning to the ground everything that's not true, what you are left with at the end, beloved, is a solid foundation. That shit ain't moving for nothing. And go with that and build. And let's go.
Let's burn it down. Burn down the lies.
And I am not advocating violence. The politicians
No,
and
no, 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 no. This is why net 7. We are non-violent. Because see, that's the thing. Like, for example, even with the government stuff, right?
yeah,
It's not it's not the government. That's the problem. It's us for not knowing
that's right.
who the government is. Again, once we go find the love, we realize that it's ourself that needs to work. Then we work on ourselves because we're ultimately dealing with, even with the driver situation, we're dealing with Roman maxims of law. And it was like decepti something something, and it means the world wished to be deceived, so let them be. The modern rendition is ignorance of the law is no excuse. So because you don't know the laws of attraction, you we keep praying for stuff that we don't want, wondering why we get more of it. And that's the fine tuning that I see that you provide in your own
Mhm.
way to the community to help them tune into what the resonant frequency that they really want and
Yep.
change their life. And we share that goal. And I appreciate you for that.
Yeah, brother.
All
It's good
right,
times.
man. Always a perfect day. We're gonna wrap this up. Say bye to the people.
Awesome. Well, YNet 7 listeners, check it out. Keep on coming back. Keep on hearing the message. Keep on working on yourselves. And like Pasha said, it's a good day. It's a perfect day.
And
Keep
burn it
pushing.
down.
Whatever's
Burn down the
alive, fucking
lies.
burn that shit down, man.
Burn
Just
down
burn
the
it down.
lies. So
You'll thank us for it later.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Knowledge is power. It's the light, the fire, right? So
That's right.
all right. Pasha Pavo, YS7. Thank you for tuning.